Oh yeah, you took that ball. That's right. You didn't bring it that shit.
Welcome to SinCast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the SinCast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Kapow!
Mm-hmm.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Share.
Aloha.
That's right. Barrett went to the sunny islands of Florida, where you do all that aloha and shit like that, right? That's where you see that. That's like, yeah.
I'm doing the hula dance.
What are you doing? No, she says it's the luau. No, because she's doing the hula dance. She's calling it the luau. He's like, what are you doing back there? Oh, the luau? Yeah, luau.
Who's angry about some stuff that they want to get off their chest?
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I'm as mad as hell.
You've never seen me very upset.
You are, motherfucker.
You are, my friend.
I guess this is sort of a podcast marking type of thing, and when we have a historical type of thing that happens, and we had a bombing in downtown Nashville, and it was apparently just the one guy, and we still don't even know like what his motivations were really.
I know probably the least of the three of you about this because I wasn't really paying attention at Christmas. Had to leave town for a little bit. I am baffled by this story, and I think that kind of ties into what you wanted to say about it, Chris.
Yeah. Well, first thing, I did not hear the bombing, did not hear the blast. A lot of people, I'd heard some reports on the news early on that people as far as Brentwood heard it, and I'm like, "Fuck you, you did not."
What?
Yeah, and
Fuck you, lady that talk to the news. You lying whore.
That's right. Totally lying whore. But it was I woke up at 6:15, so it was like 15 minutes before it happened and everything. So I was feeding cats and all that, and then I got a text from my mom about an hour later saying, I asked her when are you expecting me to come over and all that, because we're doing a Christmas thing. And she goes, 11 or so. And then she says, did you feel the explosion or hear the explosion? And I was like, what explosion? Because I had not heard of the news or anything. And so yeah, it was around 6:30. Guy took an RV down to I'm still a little shaky on where he was too, because they keep showing the footage, and I'm like, that looks like straight up 2nd Avenue is where that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're like, they parked it next to the AT&T building, and I'm like, well, that's not.
It's a different AT&T building.
Yeah, it's not the big AT&T. It's the server building. Yeah,
the server building. So they keep saying the AT&T building, and I'm like, no.
Yeah,
that's
not. I had the same problem.
Anyway, the main thing about the rant here is that I don't think anybody remembers what it was like, and this bombing certainly wasn't anything to the scale of a 9/11, but I don't think anybody realizes what it was like on 9/11. They don't remember in those early hours before everybody knew everything. Do you remember those early hours?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember all the reports that were coming out during that time? Yep. There were all sorts of wrong things happening. Yep. The same thing could go for Columbine as well.
Exactly.
Columbine was another one. That there were a lot of wrong things coming out. And we accept these things as truths, and then we have to unlearn that type of thing. But it's hard for a lot of people because they've heard that first, and now they've moved on to like, well, this is what I heard, and what you're saying that didn't happen now. Well, how do we don't know anything when things like this happen. We still don't. And it's 4 days later. We still don't know what this guy's motivation was, what he wanted to accomplish out of this, or anything. But people will get on Twitter and they will say to their hundreds of thousands of followers that they believe that it was, it's a Trump supporter, or it's Black Lives Matter, or it's all this, these different organizations. And it's like, you don't fucking know what the motivation is until we actually have an investigation. And then, of course, then we get the galaxy brain bullshit where it's like, well, the FBI is not telling you what actually happened and blah, blah, blah. I don't live in that world. Sorry. I'm never going to live in that world.
There's a whole chunk of them that are absolutely convinced it was a missile attack.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to live in that world either.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It's just that we have to wait until this story is done, the way the investigation carries out, and then get the sort of the official stuff, the official story. And then we go, all right, that's what happened there. But when we do this 24-hour news cycle thing where we're trying to speculate on what happened, I even feel bad about what we were kind of discussing amongst ourselves at one point, because even though we didn't know and we were just kind of speculating, it's still out there. Those little, well, it may have been this. He may have been trying to do this, and he may have been. It means that people get that narrative and they start running with it, and they can never get out of that narrative. And it's the reason why we can't. It's the reason why we can't get like honest news stories really anymore, is because the first thing that comes out is the first thing that people.
Yeah, there's a dude in Madison who has a similar name to this guy. And the internet just decided it was him. Posted a picture from his wife's Facebook of him and his wife and kids. He was interviewed on the news this morning. They got hate and death threats and all this stuff. And he's not even the right guy. And the only reason that happens is the rush to be first to get it right. And so for the longest time, there was like, well, there's no pictures of this guy. There's no pictures of this guy. And then it became, I'm going to be the first to find a picture of this Anthony Warner. And they find this guy named Tony Warner in Madison, Tennessee, completely unrelated dude, and ruin his life. And it's like, I was watching a bit of Doubt the other day, but it's like that sermon Philip Seymour Hoffman gives about gossip, where the priest makes the woman go cut her pillow on the roof, and he says, what happens? And she's like, feathers everywhere. He's like, well, go gather them all back up. She's like, that's impossible. And he's like, that is gossip. Like, you can't undo it once you've put it out there. Even the Boston bombing, the internet identified the wrong guy and ruined a life for about 2 or 3 weeks. That guy got death threats. It's just, and honestly, this didn't happen so much. It happened when it was just the news networks trying to scoop each other. But now that there's social media and it's just citizens trying to scoop each other, it's just off the charts. It's really, really scary sometimes.
What you just said there is the biggest danger, is these people who are misidentified as the perpetrator, even though we still don't know everything about the perpetrator and everything. They just, if that person really is the person, then the cops are going to come into his door and they're going to jail him and they're going to go through all the process. There's no need for you to play hero here, and give that guy death threats or whatever. And like, I can't only imagine what stories these people tell. Like, I called that guy and I told him what for, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, go fuck yourself. You don't have any, there's no glory to be had out of all of that. And, but like, that's the thing that scares me the most. Like the recently, this doesn't have anything to do with the bombing, but I was recently given a court summons thing a few months ago that identified Chris Atkinson, and it went through this whole story about how Chris Atkinson lent his daughter, that's wrong one, a whatever the car was. It was like a Honda Civic, wrong number 2. And then his daughter drove a high rate of speed in this neighborhood, and caused a big, huge accident and everything. And so this lawsuit was like, naming me and saying this person is also responsible for all this and everything. And after like a day's worth of like trying to figure out what the fuck I had to do about this, because none of the information was right. In fact, the date was odd. It was so weird. It was like within days of me coming back from New York to Nashville.
That's right.
It was crazy. Within days. That's how crazy it was. After thinking about that for a long time, I finally was just like, I guess I can just call this lawyer and say, you got the wrong dude. And I did. I called him and he said, oh yeah, well, yeah. I mean, if you're the wrong guy, I mean, we'll have to, and there we go. And I was like, yeah. And I didn't hear anything about it again. Thank God. But like, that type of thing can just happen. And you can be like in this situation where you were like doing nothing, and because of some some name being thrown out there that didn't need to be thrown out there, you're suddenly in a whole world of trouble, and there are a bunch of people who want to get at you.
And I should point out, the Nashville cops, I watched almost all their press conferences, and they were very careful not to give out details.
Mm-hmm.
But CNN and CBS had sources in the FBI, people in the investigation, who fed them the name and then fed them the address. And so I'm seeing on Twitter, CNN is saying that the bomber's name was Anthony Quinn Warner. And I watched a press conference 15 minutes later, and the Nashville cops refused to name the person. They were even asked, and they were like, we're not naming anybody right now. And so it's really the fault of those handful of people on the inside who are feeding this information to the news outlets. And then it's the fault of the idiots on Twitter who are like, that's the name of the guy? I'm going to go find his picture. I'm going to find his Facebook. I'm going to find his Twitter.
I'm curious about that because this is seemingly unrelated, but I think it is related. On the way down here, my son watched The Martian on the DVD player.
Yeah.
And I was listening to it. We listened to the entire thing. It's both frustrating and exhilarating to listen to because the first part is almost dialogue free when he's doing all that shit in the ham and like around all that. I'm like, what is he doing now? Hey, wait, is this where he's doing it? He's making the fire and all that. Okay. But, the care, the first time I watched that, the care that both, Jeff Daniels' character and Kristen Wiig's character take to keep the information from the public seems villainous at first, right? Mackenzie Davis is just like, everybody should see this. And so is Vincent Kapoor. But these guys are doing this so that the public, and this was what, 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. This is so the public does not react like it's reacting right now. Like, sure. I know exactly where Mark Watney is right now, and I know that he's alive, and I know that they definitely left him there on purpose, and we're trying to colonize Mars and bullshit like that. Like, I can only imagine the maneuvering that's going on in 2021 now versus back in 2015 in those organizational things, making sure there's no leaks out and that kind of thing. It's because the press is a problem. These leakers are a problem. The internet users are a problem. But, man, you got to be super fucking careful as one of these agencies, be it local or national, that you keep everything as either Lucius Fox or Christian Bale says close to the vest.
Close to the chest.
Yeah.
Chest or vest. So these leaks don't get out, and then that wildfire starts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the main thing. It's just look at any big story over the past history, and look at how the story unfolded. Some of this might be tough for some of you to go back to, and I wouldn't tell you to go back to watch something traumatic, but if you have the stomach to watch the footage, those first 5 hours of 9/11 and all that, the way the news was covering it and everything, just listen to what kind of bullshit is going on that thing. Now that you're 20 years later or so, you sit there and go, wow, they really got a lot of things wrong there in those hours after the incident happened. I wonder why that happened, because
a lot of it's driven by the business model too, right? Once you have an event like this and the local stations go 24-hour news, right? there's information, then a huge lull. And so what do? They start calling former military people who defused bombs to get them to speculate, because they want to keep your eyeballs. They want to keep you on that station because they're making bank right now. It's just the whole system is kind of to blame for why this happens. But I agree that it's fucked up for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, natural bombing, we still don't know everything. Maybe we'll find out. We may not find out. That's the thing. We may not find out what the reason is.
Yeah. What if he's a believer in a certain conspiracy theory about a certain technology, does that really make any difference about what the aftermath is, how it affects our community, that kind of thing? It's just one of those things where we have to move on from it, learn all that we can from it, and shut the fuck up until the information comes out.
Exactly. Give us actionable information, and then none of this. It might be, or it could be, or any of this type of thing. Just wait till the story's over.
I'll tell you what, though. One thing before we move off of this. Was that not one of the weirdest stories that you've ever heard? Like every little part of that, the timing, the countdown, the music, the RV, everything got progressively weirder as I was watching. I didn't watch a whole lot of news footage because it was Christmas Day. I had family over. Yeah. Very little family, by the way. I'm very careful. It was just like, what? There was music. There was a Downtown by Petula Clark. There was a countdown. Like, what is this? Like, there was nobody around.
It's one of those stranger than fiction things. If there was a movie that showed you this, and there will be now, but if there was a movie that showed you this, you wouldn't buy it. It would seem too unreal. Yeah. I think that only drove some of the speculating that was going on because it was so weird. Yeah. Because first it was just the bombing, and then it was, there was a countdown, and then they confirmed the countdown was coming from the RV, and then the next day I learned about the song, and I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. Yeah. I think that made people more curious, makes people more curious to understand why, but we'll find out eventually. We don't need. And I do want to
thank all the people that asked us if we were okay. Same thing happened after the tornadoes, multiple tornadoes after this 2020. Yeah. Thank you everybody that checks in, both text and Twitter and all that stuff. You're too kind. We're all good.
Agreed.
All right. Who else?
All right. Well, I have a very serious rant. One of the ways that this virus spreads is when people open their mouths and expel things like words, music notes, coughs, sneezes, laughs, what have you, right? This is the single biggest transmission mode, is by opening your mouth and letting something come out of it. So why are we still following all of the social scripts that we used to follow before the pandemic? Why does the cashier at the grocery store have to ask me still, did you find everything okay today, sir? How are you doing today, sir? I understand the politeness. I understand where it comes from. But now of all times, stop fucking talking to me.
This is fascinating to me. This is so fascinating to me.
But this is the biggest way that you transmit the disease.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
If I didn't find everything okay, first of all, it's ridiculous that you're forced to say this to me pre-pandemic, because if I didn't find everything okay, I'm a grown-up. I will find somebody and ask them where that shit is.
Now that you asked, by the way. No, I
only
did
got
not.
half of what I wanted. I wanted twice as much of this, but I couldn't find it. I don't know what they're asking me for. And then again, specific to Publix, they force all of their baggers to assume I want them to help me with the groceries. So whenever my transaction is done and I turn to the cart, they always speak to me. Can I help you out to your cart today, sir? No, and you can shut your mouth. I don't need your whatever the droplets out there in the air that may or may not have COVID in them.
I got a theory about those baggers, man. I think they want to. I know the public's telling them
so they can get out of there for a minute,
so they don't have to keep bagging because they'll have to bag the next person's groceries, and they're just like, my God, it's great. But you know what?
You never see them in a hurry. You never see them in a hurry to like take those out or get the carts
but
back.
Still, I mean, why don't you make a mask for the baggers that said, "Can I help you out to your cart?" and put a mask on the check cashier that says, "Did you find everything okay today, sir? Tell me if not." And we can stop saying unnecessary words during this time where the disease is transmitted by saying words.
I totally get you. Yeah.
That's so bizarre. I tell you why it's so bizarre. I have an anecdote that happened 24 hours ago.
Okay.
All right. I go to Publix, a different Publix as you.
Right.
I go to Publix to get some supplies, some victuals. I get up to the thing. Now, my local Publix is very good at enforcing the mask policy. That's why I feel the most comfortable going to that. First, it's also very open and very wide. This Publix that I went to yesterday, I saw some fucking yahoos, more than a dozen yahoos without masks and without any social repercussions. You see it where you're at, locally for us. Usually if there's one or two non-mask wearers, you'll get some stink eyes. And I hope so. And it's coming from me. They're both coming from me and several other people. These people, I saw no stink. I saw no stink eyes. I saw no evil eyes. And I was like, and yes, I got up to the cashier. I saw 2 or 3 or 4 as they were bagging. Didn't talk during the bagging. They were coming by, and I was like, I was shaking my head. I gave them all the stink eye, and I was like, "What do you guys do when you see these non-maskers? Because you're in here 12, not 8 hours a day or something like that. What do you do when you see that? Do you shake your head? Do you give them the stink eye, that kind of thing?" And they said, "We're not allowed to do that." And I said, "Seriously?" And we go into this conversation, and there's the bagging girl was saying, well, there was a story about how somebody came back after somebody shamed their anti-mask and killed the person. And I was like, holy shit. And then I get out in the parking lot. The story doesn't end there. So get out in the parking lot. My wife, who was with me, says, "Why'd you do all that?" And I said, "Well, I was wondering. I'm on their side. I'm asking them how they react to all these non-maskers that come in here." And she's like, "First of all, you expelled air droplets by having that fucking conversation in the first place. Second of all, you put them in an awkward situation. Third of all, they told a story that terrified our son. Now he's going to have fucking nightmares." She didn't say fucking because she's an angel.
Your wife for the win.
But it's bizarre because you and she, Jeremy, are correct. I should not have done that. I was curious because if I wanted to show solidarity with these people. I wanted to say, like, man, I'm so sorry that you have to deal with these people. But I was part of the problem. And my wife called me out on it in the parking lot.
That's
Didn't
awesome.
even wait until we got into the van. I was like, oh, you're right.
It reminds me of that Hannibal Buress thing. I won't be able to do justice to it, but he's like, I got pulled over for speeding. And the guy was like, why were you speeding? And he's like, because this car is awesome. And so like he's like, look, did we really have to do all of this? Like, he's like, come on, officer, you had to speed up to catch up to me. So you're doing the exact same thing that I was doing. Why don't you? She's trying to say something to the effect of, don't do the same thing that I was doing just so that you can pull me over and tell me don't do that. Just you pull me over and just say, don't do that, basically, is what you said. It's like, you're just as bad as I am.
Boy, that's a timely rant. And and you're absolutely right. And I'm going to stop. I'm going to change my behavior. I'm still going to give stink eyes, man. I'm going to stink the fuck out of that place anytime I see a dumbass not wearing mask. But I'm going to stop. I'm going to shut my fucking mouth. I'm not going to now. Is your rant over, Jeremy?
I'm done, baby.
Speaking of grocery stores, I am baffled about this whole thing. I'll try to keep it short. Okay, so we all know about the toilet paper shortage at the beginning of this pandemic. For whatever reason, people thought they were going to shit their brains out, and they needed to get the toilet paper hoarded. God knows how much they hoarded back in those days in March, April, that kind of thing. Same thing goes for hand sanitizer, which is now, of course, readily available everywhere. So much so that people are putting gobs of it in their hands and just throwing it around willy-nilly.
Yes. Yeah, I saw a sanitizer fight the other day, actually.
Yeah, just a slap fight, just with sanitizer, so they could do it like nice and clean.
It's hard to walk down the sidewalk without getting into a Purell shower because everybody's doing that type of thing.
But then, as you people probably noticed, I noticed weird things going missing in the grocery store. I noticed there was a run on seltzer for like a month. I could not find seltzer. I like me some seltzer. Never had a problem getting seltzer. There's different types of it. I usually get the discount thing because it's the same fucking thing as LaCroix or LaCroix, whatever the fuck you want to call it. So, that went on for a little bit. There's little things there. Which do I do first? Okay. There's a bucatini a shortage that just came out a few days ago on grubstreet.com, and it was circulated by all these chefs. Now, bucatini, if you didn't know, is spaghetti essentially with a little hole in it. It does really well with pasta sauces. It fills very nicely. It's sexy, that kind of thing. But there's a shortage on bucatini, and there was an investigative journalist that went to the bottom of it, and it's a hilarious read. I'll try to put it in the show notes. Anyway, weird things. So my mom, on the way, by the time you listen to this, I'll be back from Florida, so don't come stalk me. But my mom on the way down here called me and said, "Hey, can you get me some Old Bay seasoning?" Like, you guys ever use Old Bay? It's used on steamed crabs and stuff like that. Crawfish boil, shrimp bowls, and stuff like that. And I was like, "Yeah, I get you some crab boil." I was like, "Why?" She said, "You can't find any of it up in Nashville." And I was like, "That's a weird thing to go missing." I was like, "Fine, they're bound to have it in Florida." So we go get some crabs and get some crab boil. And I was like, "Oh, let's get some Old Bay for Mom." No Old Bay down here. Why is Old Bay missing from the shelves? Why are random things missing from the shelves? Is it just because there's one ingredient in each of these things that causes some sort of shortage? Can they not compensate for that ingredient in another way? The bucatini story, which I don't know if either of you read, involved some sort of FDA kerfuffle. Like, what is happening? I have to imagine that even if there is an ingredient or something like that, there's a shortage, it's also a human behavioral thing where there's a run on something. Right? Or do you think I'm wrong? Do you think it's a manufacturing problem?
Well, okay. So I was searching for 2 cereals for my wife from April to, I think it was November before either one of them reappeared. Grape Nut Flakes and All Bran Flakes. And they were both out. And eventually both stores, Kroger and Publix, put tags up that said manufacturer production issue. So my suspicion there's some measure of ingredient that in their production line had a run on it, like toilet paper, what have you. I know specifically with drinks that there was a shortage of aluminum for cans, and so the major soft drink companies have been making cans of their fringe flavors less and less, and focusing more on their main, most popular flavors, and so. For instance, my wife likes Fresca, and we haven't been able to find Fresca in cans for months because Coke isn't making it in cans anymore. They're using their cans for Coke and shit that people buy more readily. And so I do think it is largely now. Granted, the toilet paper and shit ran out because of human behavior. Oh shit, we're going to run out. We got to go get it. That first wave where all the frozen veggies were gone and all the frozen meat was gone.
And the pastas at that point.
That was behavioral. That was panic buying. But then the shortages that have persisted are more about production issues where there's some ingredient. And again, some of this is import-export during a time of pandemic where certain countries aren't we're not accepting things from certain countries that have yada yada. We're not shipping as much to other countries because people are sick and whatnot. I think it's just production shortages. But
I see. All right, so maybe we solved this mystery.
I'm noticing this with cat food, even.
Really?
Like, stuff that just didn't make any sense. Like, why every time I go to PetSmart, they don't have this one thing anymore? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And at first I thought it was, well, maybe it's like the ingredients of that thing that they're having a hard time. Like, it was like a backyard cookout temptation food or whatever. And it was specifically this one size. But they had all the smaller size, but they never get that bigger size for some reason. So I never understood what that was. And it was either it was because they're using, it could be something like you were talking about, like they're using that plastic bottle for more chicken flavor, stuff that's more popular or whatever. My cats love the backyard cookout ones, man.
Well, we don't have backyards anymore. Why would we get a backyard?
Yeah. So yeah, wow. That's one of those hidden things. It would be nice to know a lot of times, but I mean, there's so many millions of products with all their different. Who could possibly keep up with it all? Like
bizarre. It's bizarre, especially the ones that I really want at a specific time. Like I really need Old Bay to season my crabs. Nope. Fuck you.
You need Salt Bay.
I need Salt Bay.
I'm going to Salt Bay your ass.
I need to import the guy to do the thing. All right. Well, my rant is over. You killed my rant, but I'm glad you did because it answered a question. But the bucatini thing, by the way, goes deeper than you think. You should read that article, especially Jeremy.
I just want to eat that pasta after I looked at a picture of it.
That pasta is dope. You've eaten it at fancy restaurants, I'm sure.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever had a cylinder pasta with a hole in the middle.
Oh, it's fucking amazing.
My wife doesn't like that. My wife just likes noodles, but I'm all about the penne and rotini and anything that can let me put shit inside the pasta.
Correct. That's why it's so sexy. You're penetrating the pasta. It's not like penne where it's a big hole that you can't even fit into sometimes. Mm-hmm. This is a small hole that you have to really work to get in there.
I'm glad you guys can't see
Once you do, because it's got the outside coverage and then it's up in there and then it twirls. Oh, it's so good.
So today we're going to have a little bit of a different discussion. I think Jeremy came to us with this possibility of a podcast topic and talk about different movies with great lighting that we admire.
Ooh.
I'm sure that we won't have the broad spectrum of the best lighting of all time in this or anything. And there'll be scenes that people think of that are like, well, I'm surprised you didn't bring this up or whatever. And it's like, well, this is our list. This is our one.
We know that Shadow of Doubt and Diabolique and pretty much every Hitchcock movie has perfect lighting. We know that a lot of the Orson Welles stuff, even though we're going to talk about some of that, has amazing lights. Billy Wilder has amazing lighting, especially Sunset Boulevard. He did Sunset Boulevard, right?
Yeah.
With the downward lighting on the main character there. But we're going to do more favorites than, say, a traditional best.
And I am certain as well that given more time to think about this, I would probably come up with others that I should have said that, smack my head or smack, whatever. But like, these are the ones that came to mind for all of us, I believe. And so, who wants to sort of start us off?
I'll start. And I think this could be a recurring topic. Again, it's like heart of the movie for me. It's like, like obviously Blade Runner 2048 or whatever the fuck has amazing lighting all the way throughout. I was specifically motivated to create this topic when I was watching the movie Sneakers. It's not first of all, it's a friend of the show, the movie Sneakers. It's not a movie that if you said, "What is a movie that has outstanding lighting?" I'd immediately go, "Oh, Sneakers." No, but there's this one moment when Robert Redford goes to the Russian consulate to talk to his basically Russian counterpart, former spy guy / friend. They go down into the pool room because Robert Redford thinks that this guy has basically leaked who his real identity is, and that's how he got jumped. Or no, he's not. He gets jumped later. But somebody leaked his identity, and he thinks it's this Russian guy, but the Russian guy's like, no, we couldn't even use the box. Lord knows I wanted that box. But your code systems are entirely different from ours. We'd never be able to use that box to crack your codes, which is kind of a key little flash, like foreshadowing there. Anyway, so it's dark in this pool room, and the Russian guy is like, what I say to you now, I cannot say to you in this building. Come, Marty. And he takes a couple steps away, and Robert Redford hesitates. And the Russian guy steps closer and reaches out his hand and says, you must trust me. But when he steps forward, his face goes from the light into complete shadow. Mm-hmm. So while he's extending a hand and saying, you must trust me, the lighting is saying he can't completely trust this guy. And it's just a perfect way to underscore the relationship between these two guys and a little bit of foreshadowing about what happens next. But that had never stood out to me before when watching that until this most recent time. And I was like, oh, he's completely shadowed when he says, trust me. That's awesome. So that was the inspiration for this topic that I hope will become recurring.
So the 78th time that you watched this, you got that thing from it.
Let's not forget the whole scene too, where they take him on that, they hit him over the head and they put him in the trunk and they put him, they take him to the toy company or whatever in his office. And that whole scene with him and Ben Kingsley during that is got this lighting to it. That's just, it's out of this world. It puts you in a different place. I really like that. But when you said Sneakers, that was the first thing I thought of was that scene that you brought up. Because that is a great scene for sure. And I think a lot of the best lighting tends to do that, right? Where they put a character in shadow. It's sort of a symbolism, foreshadowing type of thing where you see that, and when the character goes from the shadow to the light is important and vice versa and whatever. But yes, we all have several of these. So do we want to do a round robin or
that's what I was going to suggest. Let's each do one and come back around.
Let's do it.
All right. The one that I came up with first was Fight Club.
Nice.
There's something about Fight Club's lighting, especially all the dingy places that they go to, that really blends in with the sort of the insomnia that Edward Norton is experiencing at the same time. But think about all these little places that they go to. The convenience store is swathed in darkness except for street lights. The projection booth, the actual club in the basement, the actual Fight Club in the basement, and everything. When they do that Project Mayhem thing, and the big huge ball is rolling down the stairwell and everything. Everything is lit just grungy enough to get you into that world. And I really, really love how Fight Club is lit. Of course, the cinematography is fantastic too in Fight Club. But yeah, the lighting in Fight Club stands out to me.
Awesome.
You ever been to one of those self-help meetings, like even just with a friend or just like happened upon them, or when you were at church or anything like that? It's weird.
Yeah, I've actually been to one of those. I went with a friend to an AA once.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Now, from my recollection, was it super like fluorescent lighting, or was it super dim?
I think fluorescent lighting. I think it was just your regular.
I think it normally is. And and it's so weird that in Fight Club in particular, when he goes to, Bob has bitch tits and all that stuff, testicular cancer, it's in this giant gymnasium that's completely dark except for right over the circle. And I'm like, no, they would have all that shit on because it's weirdly like expository to have all this confessional stuff out there with this harsh lighting. But the way Fincher's team does it, we should say that the lighting coordinators and like all the behind the scenes techs do this probably more than the directors. But I'm sure the directors have a lot of input on this too.
Yeah, sure.
The first thing that came to mind for me was the remake of Suspiria, the Luca Guadagnino version, 2018, because the original 1977 one was hailed for its use of color and its use for lighting, but this one just killed me. Now, the color is fantastic in this movie. But the lighting, in particular in the dance scenes, is really where you get some heavy lifting, particularly in the Volk performance. Jeremy, have you seen this yet? Have you seen the remake?
No.
All right. Yeah, I know it's a little on the grossy side for your taste, but it's amazing. It's amazing to watch, and I've watched it now probably 6 or 7 times. The first dance is shielded because it's basically a tryout for Dakota Johnson's character, even though she's tried out and she's made this with this amazing ballet troupe. They're saying, "Can you dance this?" And she says, "Yes, I can." And they're like, "Yeah, right." And so the elders basically sit and watch her in silhouette, not in silhouette, in shadow. And she is brightly lit doing this incredible dance that is so energetic that Tilda Swinton down like a floor or two below her, like looks up and she's like, "Holy shit, what's going on up there?" And she goes up and witnesses. Now that's amazing. But the real tallywhacker is the one where they do the performance they've been building up to, this Volk performance, which was, by the way, written by Tom York of Radiohead. And it's the one that you've seen on the posters where they're all dressed in red ribbon and stuff like that. They have stuff on their eyes, and it's a very kinetic performance. And the prima ballerina at that point is Dakota Johnson's character, and her counterpart is Mia Goth. And Mia Goth has just recently had her leg broken, but magically she is good to go, and she's freakily good to go. This is lit so beautifully. There's so many silhouettes. There's so many flailing limbs. There's a part where Dakota Johnson's eyes turn, I think, from brown to blue, and Mia Goth's do the opposite. And there's just so much going on. And then there's a moment where that causes the performance to stop. And then the lights just kind of come back to normal, and you realize how meticulous they were with this lighting up until that point. And man, this movie is such a weird classic, but it's going to be one of my favorites that I go back to over and over again. And lighting is a big part of it. Color is a big part of it. And the dancing and the performances is so good. You notice that too, Chris? Particularly
that movie's mesmerizing in so many ways. And you're talking about colors and the dancing itself. That's all of that is its own art form. But yes, the lighting of it is amazing as well too. During all of that, I would say, Jeremy, even if you may not even understand what the fuck is going on in that movie, it's worth watching for that. Okay. It's a strange movie, but man, that scene right there will get you right in. I mean, you'll not want to leave that scene. That's how good it is.
That scene is amazing. Musically is weird. It's not even, Tom York and Radiohead have been known to be weird, but even for them, it's not atonal or anything like that. It goes with it, but it's just a very German modern dance, and it will, you won't take your eyes off the screen. It is special. One of the coolest things that I think I've seen that year for sure.
Yeah.
All right. My second example I'm going to go with is the opening scene of Inglourious Bastards, where we see this bright country farm, sunshine and blue sky, and then Christoph Waltz comes into this house, and it's immediately dark with that. They sit at this table, and there's this mysterious, unexplained overhead orange light shining down on the table, but they're both still kind of in shadow, even though they're sitting at the table. And the light is basically, I feel like Tarantino saying, this is the most important thing going on right now. This conversation, you pay attention to this right here. And there's a lot of cool lighting flourishes in that scene, like when he goes down below the floor. But just that opening conversation where they're lit from above, and then there's just, little bits of daylight trickling in through the cracks of the cabin. It's one of my favorite scenes of all time, but it just, it's a very, I feel like that lighting is not subtle at all. And it works perfectly there.
Nothing in that scene is subtle, except everything is. The French farmer barely moves a muscle when he responds to Christoph Waltz. He'll ask him a question and he'd be like, "Way."
Yeah.
And not even move a muscle. And then even when there's such an economy of movement where he's lighting his pipe, and then it's offset by the cartoonishly large one that Christoph Waltz, like, may I also smoke my pipe? Gajung! Like this sailboat of a pipe. And he's just like, all right, there's everything good. Oh, man. Oh, that's so good.
I think it's interesting, too, how he shot that scene, because, I mean, there's the idea, the Hitchcock idea of suspense is to show the audience a bomb, and then instead of having the bomb explode like a surprise or whatever like that. Right. And in this one, Tarantino doesn't show you that there are people hiding under the floorboards yet. At first, you don't even know what this conversation's about.
Yeah.
Then midway through it, the camera goes down and shows you the people under the floorboards. Then we have the conversation becomes tense where it wasn't before. Yeah. It just looks like, okay, well, yeah, this is a Nazi asshole. This is probably not good that he's visiting, but doesn't seem to be any real danger. And then boom, see that there are people under the floorboards. I do love that scene.
It's awesome. It's outstanding. Honestly, I should have used that last week for best opening scene for a mediocre movie. For
that ain't a mediocre movie. What are you talking about?
I don't really. I guess I'm defining the question differently. I don't think the movie's mediocre, but I think none of the rest of that movie lives up to that opening scene.
Oh, the bar scene.
The bar scene is up there. The bar scene is up there. You're right. But that's okay. I don't really care much about all the theater shit and the shooting up Hitler and out on the field and drawing them blade in his forehead and all that shit.
I love the way you describe this movie. I just want to hear you describe the rest of it.
I remember Cracked did that article about like how movies could have been different, and like Tarantino apparently had planned on being Aldo Rain, I think, maybe. I can't remember if he was Aldo Rain. I think it might have been Aldo Rain, because and there's a point where, like, at the end where he's carving that thing into crystal, and it's gonna be my masterpiece. And then right after that it says directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, I can see that having at least a flash in his mind.
If you recall reading anything on Cracked, like you'd read something like that, and then you'd read like a paragraph, and there'd be this picture. There was a picture underneath of Quentin Tarantino and a caption that read, "This fucking guy."
Perfect.
The third man came up in my head when lighting was brought up. Carol Reed, if you've seen, I've only seen a couple of his movies, Third Man and Odd Man Out. Both of them are shot beautifully, and Jeremy mentioned in the prep that black and white films just in general tend to have these great lighting moments and everything. But the third man, Joseph Cotton is looking for Orson Welles. He doesn't know who it is right off the bat, but there's this scene where Joseph Cotton's like running through this city, and just the way it's just shot is beautiful. It's an unbelievable like tour de force type of scene for a movie. It's unbelievable. But Joseph Cotton is yelling out into the void. He doesn't know where this guy is. And then somebody who is tired of Joseph Cotton yelling, it's like in the middle of the night or whatever, turns on an apartment light. And the light shines down on Orson Welles and it reveals him to Joseph Cotton. And it's just a gorgeous scene all the way through. And just the fact that that he's been hiding in all these shadows this whole time. And then something as simple as that reveals him and everything is just a fantastic movie moment. If you haven't seen The Third Man, you need to watch The Third Man.
Awesome.
This was couple 4 years after Citizen Kane, right? Late 40s.
So. It was 49.
49, man.
For like 8 years.
Like I said, we could do like a million of these, especially black and white ones, where something like that happens. And you got to imagine that some of this was out of necessity, right? Instead of having to rely on or being able to rely on color to get a mood across or to get your point across, you had to rely on light only, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of all the other tools at your disposal. So yeah. I watched Third Man on Mubi fairly recently, and I need to go back to it because that was one that really got me going.
Yeah,
Austrian stuff. I'm a fan of Austrian stuff. Gets me. Hey, remember when Jeremy insulted the idea of putting Blade Runner 2049 on this list? I'm going to put Blade Runner 2049 on this list.
Well, he, to be fair, he called it 2048, which is
that's true. Movie. Maybe it's a different. This is the sequel.
Totally different.
So I'm going to put Blade Runner 2049 on this fucking list, and you could actually, when you think about this movie, you can't help but think about the original Blade Runner. The original Blade Runner has quite a few different moments, but my favorite moment from that original is when Sean Young introduces herself and you see the eyes come out first, and if you're plugged into the movie, you know she's a replicant really at that moment, right? Where she just appears out of that shadow. But my favorite moment in this series of moments, the greatest landscape that Roger Deakins and Denis Villeneuve did was that Vegas landscape. I mean, that Vegas landscape just makes my jaw drop every time I see it, especially on a 4K TV or something like that. I saw it in theaters, and it was unbelievable. But my favorite use of lighting in this is towards the end. I've always appreciated this movie about what it means to be human, what it means to have a soul, what it means to be regarded as something sentient. And I think this movie does a good job about it. One is the difference between a replicant, which is viewed as below human, and the joystick, which is played by Ana de Armas in this movie, and is literally a hologram. So how could she have a soul? How could she be sentient? How could she be human if she's not even physically there? And so by the time this moment happens, it's been out long enough where I don't think this is a spoiler. It's gone through all the Vegas stuff. Ryan Gosling has had his ass beat at this point. He's got a broken nose. He's just all over the place. He's been blowed up. It's been crazy. Walks back to his place in whatever the fuck they're in, and he looks over, and they've got these giant billboards of the joy person, right? And it's Ana de Armas as the joy person, but it's not his joy. And so his joy became sentient to him, and she bends down with the titties all showing. That's awesome. But she bends down, and I'm going to cut that. She bends down, and she's like, "Hey, big boy," or something like that, like a prostitute would approach a client. She bends over, and she's like, "Hey, you want to try this?" And the blue that emanates from her figure onto Ryan Gosling's face when it cuts to him, you can see his total, just absolute abjectation. Is that right? just where resignation, I should say, where he's like, I've finally found love. I finally found a purpose for my life that's outside of this just meaningless replicant killing. And now this person that I recognize is trying to approach me, but it's not my life anymore. My life as I know it is completely over. And that trick of showing him bathed in that blue light that would be represented by his, quote, girlfriend is soul destroying and also beautiful at the same time. You guys know what moment I'm talking about here?
Yeah. Are you lonely? I can fix that.
Yeah. Yes. And the titties.
Yeah. And yes, and they are very nice. Yes.
Yes. Isn't that a beautiful moment though? Like that really, it's right before the final act, I reckon. Right. But it's the opposite of the characters protagonists argue with themselves before the final act of the movie cliche. It's saying that he's given up. He kind of knows what his end game is at this point. And it's to face off against Jared Leto. But this is where he says, okay, that's it for me. and that in itself is human to me. And God, I could talk about this movie all day. And I could talk about titties.
Do we want to go another round?
One more?
I could do this all day, seriously.
All right, speaking of titties, Finding Nemo.
See, now there's no way that Barrett can cut any of the titty things now because we've done too many side things about titties. I can just imagine how many times he's tried to cut. You're like, I'll cut the first mention of titties, but then we're gonna just be saying talking about titties. Now Jeremy seems like the dirty person.
Yeah, cut all mine out and be like, Jeremy, what is wrong with you?
What a dirty person he is. A dirty, dirty fucking person.
I have been on record multiple times saying I think Finding Nemo is a perfect movie. And it is one of the earliest Pixar movies where the animation just made me go, wow. And a lot of it is the lighting. I mean, I know they did a lot of work to get the water and how water behaves and moves, but it's that light of the sun or lack thereof coming down in beams around them throughout the whole movie. There's that section where they're way down and it's dark, and then they find that light that actually is a fish that wants to eat them, and there's a whole chase scene that shows great lighting there. And the moment I think is the best is right in the beginning, man, where Marlin has a wife and hundreds of kids, and then a barracuda shows up, and Marlin has no wife and only has one kid with a cracked little egg, and he goes down and he picks him up with his fin, and he says, "It's okay, Daddy's got you." And the camera, quotes, pans up, and you see the moon through the water's surface, and as the main theme kicks in, it turns to sun and daylight and pans over, and Nemo's grown up, and it's the first day of school and coming out of the urchin thing, and I got goosebumps right now because that moment gives you hope. That moment is, hey, this was a dark opening, but here is the hope. This is going to end happy. And that transition from the moonlight to the sunlight gets me every time. Not to mention that score is just fucking fantastic. But if you want good examples of light, Finding Nemo is full of them.
Was that Giacchino?
Thomas Newman.
Oh, was that? Would you say that's before Giacchino really got kind of like assimilated into the Pixar mix?
His first one was Incredibles.
Giacchino was like on Alias during this point.
Oh, I see.
Right? Wasn't that sort of what he was doing at the point Finding Nemo came out? Like Alias and Lost and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Incredibles was his first score for Pixar.
You can, and you'll know that it's Thomas Newman because there's a scene when they're trying to get out of the net towards the end that sounds exactly like Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
The other day I was watching something. It was some random movie, some random ass movie. And I was like, And it was like that's fucking James Horner. He's doing that fucking thing that he does and everything. And I love James Horner, but there's that little thing that he does. Speaking of sneakers, where there's that piano shiver that he does.
Yeah.
And he does that in Apollo 13 and all that. And this was some movie, I can't even remember what it was, but it wasn't a big
Sliver.
movie. Yeah, it was probably Sliver.
Didn't he do Field of Dreams too?
Probably. I think that's right. The movie, the next movie that I have on my list is The Natural. The Natural has a lot of these scenes where lighting is important to the characters and everything, especially with the character known as the Judge in the movie, because he likes to be bathed completely in darkness. So when Roy Hobbs walks into his office for the first time, all it is just dark, and the only thing that lights the scene, I'm sure that there's other little fill lights here and there, but the only thing that lights the scene is sort of the light that's coming from outside through the curtains, basically, and it's not much light. It's still very, very dark. And lighting is also plays a factor into how they light Barbara Hershey in the movie. I don't know if you how well versed are you guys on The Natural? Because have you ever seen it?
Well. I've seen it.
I saw
it's
it
been forever.
Probably 10 times before I hit 15. But since then, most of my knowledge comes from you.
Yeah, like Barbara Hershey plays a character who is a serial killer of famous athletes that shows up in the very beginning, and there's this talk about a very famous athlete has died and everything, and we see Barbara Hershey on the train with the Whammer played by Joe Don Baker, and she's obviously following him, but once Roy Hobbs strikes him out at the carnival, her attentions go over to Roy Hobbs. And so there's a scene where they're in the hotel and she invites him over to her room because hell yeah, Barbara Hershey is inviting me over to her room. So definitely going to go see what that's all about. And, but she's dressed in black and puts a veil down over her face. She's a crazy fucking person in this movie. Just the way they have her lit and the way they light Kim Basinger, who's basically the next femme fatale in this movie for Roy Hobbs, and everything. But I like how they light the baseball field. If you ever look at sports movies, they do this weird thing where the directors still want to have their shadows, and they want to have something that looks movie like or whatever. And we all know that when we watch a football game or a baseball game, it's not like there's these hidden shadows
Ain't
everywhere.
No shadows in a baseball field.
Bathed in light, man. And so when you watch The Last Boy Scout, or you watch Any Given Sunday, or Moneyball, which is another one that does this weird shit, it's weird. But when you watch The Natural, the field is bathed in light, and the stands themselves don't have as much light, but it's still to look at the field itself, where there's not these dark corners and everything, it's kind of a breath of fresh air when you watch other sports movies and then get to The Natural and everything. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah. Even Moneyball, some of those shots of the baseball field, I'm like, there's a lot of shadow work there.
Yeah. Yeah. So he'd be out running at a fly ball in right field and be like, oh my God, I'm bathed in blackness.
You'll see in the montage where David Justice is watching balls go across the plate, and they're not strikes, and he's just all right, the whole getting on base thing is getting to the whole team, and you can see David Justice looking at these balls and everything is superly dramatically lit and everything. Oh yeah, you took that ball. That's right.
Oh, Jesus
Christ. Oh my God. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't call out Citizen Kane. I know we've talked about, the classics and everything and not being able to get to all of them, but one of the greatest there's many great parts of being on the Cinemasins team, but I had not seen Citizen Kane until we sinned it. Which was 2016, I believe, maybe fall of 2016. And I watched it first because I was like, there's no way I'm fucking watching this for the first time and like writing dick jokes about Orson Welles and Joseph Cotton and shit like that. So I watched it first, and that first watch was just me and a kid in a candy store. And what I found most arresting, you can go through all the different shots of, the camera pan through the window and how they light, his ex mistress, and even in the when they're doing the campaign where the camera is shooting straight up. But my favorites are the aerial shots of Xanadu, and by aerial I mean interior aerial shots where it's so vast, and they do these high-mounted camera shots where it's looking down on the big living room with the giant fireplace that can fit like 90 people in there, and when the fire is lit, when he's actually talking in there, it casts this pall of shadows. You can see, quote, shadows of this in The Big Lebowski, actually, when the dude is going to talk to the real Lebowski, and he's by the fire. But anytime you get into Xanadu, there's plenty of, it's heresy to say, but it's a little fake looking shots exterior of Xanadu. When they're going up the hill and everything, it looks like an Addams Family house, basically. But when you get interior to it, oh my God, it will make your heart jump. And when he comes out to eventually leave and take his mistress on that trip, the mirror shot, which is not necessarily a lighting shot, it's a camera trick, but that will explode in your heart. See what I did there? It will explode your heart in all the right places, because this is cinematography and lighting and directing at its finest. And I just wanted to call it specifically the interior shots of Xanadu, because those were absolutely my favorite part. And then I send the dick jokes and stuff like that.
There you go. There you go.
Yep.
Proper.
Well, I don't think there'd be a good list of this if we didn't put some of the classics like The Third Man.
No, all right, I get you.
There is that weird cock that's in Citizen Kane. There's a weird cock in there. Very strange looking cock.
It's a stunt cock, which is the weirdest thing.
Right. No, there's one that just screams out of nowhere in the middle of the movie. It's like an editing thing. After Susan Alexander has yelled at Charlie Kane, and they're about to take that big vacation and everything. And
you're talking about the actual cock that comes through and goes, nah!
Yeah, like when she's like, "You never given me anything before that meant anything to you," and all that other stuff that goes on, and then they go on the vacation, and there's this sound. It's like a cock. It's a cock.
I wonder how much ink has been spilled over that particular decision in that movie over the last, it's now been 80 years.
Yeah. And I never understand it unless he's making a statement about Susan Alexander, and that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because she's screeching, but she's also right. So I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But anyway. Is that it?
Yeah. Can we do one more round?
Sure. I'll do one more round.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to go a little intentional misinterpretation of my own topic, but the movie Insomnia, Light becomes a character at one point in this film because Pacino is struggling so much to adapt, basically investigating a murder in this Alaskan town where at this point of the year the sun never sets, and at other points of the year it never comes up. And I don't know how fictional or real the actual town is, but I know there are places like this where, it's dark for 3 months of the year and light for 3 months of the year. And so first there's just gags of, him saying, okay, well, let's get some supper. And they're like, well, it's 7 a.m, stuff like that, because he's not adjusted yet. And I'll be honest, this movie has grown on me. I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times. The first time or two I saw it, I didn't think it was Nolan's best work. And maybe it's not in the upper tier, but I do love the parallels here where Pacino has this thing in his past that he's probably guilty of, and this thing in his present that he's definitely guilty of, that he's not talking to anyone about. And it's dark shit. And yet he's confronted by light everywhere he goes. There are no shadows for him to hide his sin in, to the point where he's putting cushions and shit up against the hotel windows to try and block every last bit of light he can, and it's still not enough. And that, I feel like, is very intentional because he's deeply disturbed and has done some bad things, and he's wrestling with demons. And maybe it's a little too on the nose, but I love that the movie is basically forcing him to live all this out in the light. He can't hide from any of this, and it eventually catches up to him.
There's a moment in that movie because we see the room he's staying in, and it does appear like the light just doesn't ever stop. He can't do anything to block out that light. But then Maura Tierney shows up, who's the person who owns the place, the motel bar place or whatever, and knocks on the door, and he goes, "I'm just trying to block out the light in here." And she goes, "It's completely dark in here."
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You see it from her perspective, and you're right, and she's right. It's completely dark, but just the tiniest sliver of light is causing him sleep issues. Well, along with that thing he did, but it's crazy when you see it from her perspective, because this whole movie you've been going, God, he just can't block that light out, can he?
Yeah.
And by the end of that point, you're like, oh, he blocked it out. He just is completely like, yeah.
Might be one of the most nuanced later day Pacino performances, right? Because he's not all super shouty. He's not
no shouty.
He's not all ranty.
He's tired.
He's tired. And even in, of course, he had that 88 minutes and Righteous Kills and all that stuff. And then he comes back with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But even there, he's way over the top. Marvin Schwartz, you know, and he's just making this whole character. But
my least favorite part of that movie.
Do what?
He's my least favorite part of that movie.
I agree with that. But even that. But in Insomnia, he's muted, and he used to do that back in the early 70s and mid 70s and stuff like that. And then he just boom.
And even Robin Williams, I think, is muted in this movie. He's not manic like his comic stuff, but when he has veered dramatic, he tended to be like sometimes extra serious. And in this, he's almost matter of fact about what he's done and why he's doing it. And it only makes him creepier. Whereas in something like 1 Hour Photo, he's trying to be creepy and it doesn't come off as creepy. Anyway, I really like Insomnia more than I used to.
Nolan must have had some pretty good clout, or at least good respect built up either through Memento or whatever happened pre-Insomnia, because Nolan was, I think, only 29 maybe when he did Insomnia.
Oh, really?
He might have been younger than that even. And I watched that disc the other day. Well, it was like 2 or 3 months ago. And there's an interview with him and Pacino on there, and I'm like, man, not that it would have been a major deal. You just made a movie with the guy, so obviously you can get an interview with him like that. But just to be able to get an hour-long conversation with Pacino and just sit there and talk about movies. This Pacino's got, decades of experience over what you have, and you haven't really been established yet and everything. I have to think that before Insomnia was made, he made them realize, I'm not here just to have your usual shtick in this movie.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to do that, I'll get somebody else to play it. I don't, basically saying, I want you guys, but I don't want I don't want, Al, I don't want your devil's advocate, and Robin, I don't want your, I don't know, what dreams may come or whatever. But
exactly. Who's in that interview? Is it just Nolan and Pacino, or
just Nolan and Pacino?
Is that as amazing as I kind of think it is?
It's pretty great. Just the history of Pacino is just. It's funny, we never see Pacino on talk shows, but he would be a great talk show guest. Because once he starts talking, he never stops.
Yeah, well, I heard that on the Malton interview when they did it a few years ago. But yeah, I could imagine him being interviewed by Christopher Nolan circa, what is it, 2001 was Insomnia, or was it 2000?
2003, somewhere in there. I think the movie came out in 2002. But but yeah, I just wondered. I wonder if Nolan and he's, I don't know if there was some sort of special sauce there where he was able at that age with only one movie under his belt, well, technically two, to be able to go, I want this performance from Pacino.
Hey, Al, here's what I want from you, Al.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want this from Robin Williams. So, yeah, I'll try to pass along that interview if you guys want to see it.
Yeah, I would love to.
I can get that. Speaking of Pacino, talk about Heat. Heat's got some great lighting moments, but the best for me is the climax at the airport. Everything about that scene at the airport where Pacino is chasing down De Niro. He's finally got his man cornered somewhere. Out in the middle of that field with all the I don't know, the Transformers or whatever it is that they're going around. And De Niro is hiding and everything's very quiet except occasionally a plane flying overhead and everything. It's obviously very dark. Pacino can't see anything really in front of him. De Niro, that's the good thing for Pacino. De Niro really can't see anything either. But there's a moment where a plane flies over. And you can see that the runway lights come on and everything. There's sort of a preview about what's going to happen in the scene, because the first time it happens, nothing really happens other than, we know that this can happen now. It'll bathe the entire field in light when this happens and everything. So then Pacino goes out and basically out in the middle of the open there, where he could easily get shot if De Niro spots him, but it's just dark enough that De Niro doesn't expose himself yet, and Pacino, he can't see Pacino yet. But then there's this gorgeous shot of a plane flying overhead as Pacino is looking along the side, and these lights all prop up and everything. And there's this beautiful, just like everything is lit up in that field and everything. De Niro comes around his transformer thing and he's ready to fire. Pacino, like his cop instincts kick in, and it's like, comes over and he swings over and he gets the shot off before De Niro can get his off. And, but that scene is lit so well. It's so beautiful to watch.
It's perfect. That's a perfect example. That is so awesome. Mm-hmm. And that's a series of amazing I think of Heat as like a very angular movie. It seems like all the shots are divided between black and white, because that's essentially kind of like a theme of the movie, is the differences between the two of them. And I love that. I love that scene.
Yeah. Or the similarities between the two of them.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, only one has a goatee, though.
There you go. Only one has a Natalie Portman stepdaughter.
Yeah, that's true.
Only one has a fucking scene in there, right? No. Because Pacino has a fucking scene, like one of his first scenes in the movie. Does De Niro have a sex scene with Amy Brenneman?
Yeah, right? I don't know. I guess I'm watching Heat tonight.
I don't remember there being a sex scene. I just remember them showing them, and it looked official that they had fucked, but I don't think there was any scene in there.
There was
it was afterglow. So yeah.
Jesus. All right, I got the final one, and it's a super cheat, because I want people to watch this program because it's immediately, when I think about light and I think about color and I think about tricks, I think about Gorillaz, the animated band fronted by Damon Albarn from Blur. and happened to catch this one night on what became MTV Live. It was at the time Muse TV or something like that. And it was 2006 or shortly afterwards. And they did a show at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. And it was performed rather than just on a screen like they normally did with their avatars and all that stuff. It was performed completely in silhouette in these beautiful panels of color throughout the entirety of the performance. And it was one of the most beautiful things I had ever seen. And it still persists, 15 years now. Later on, I can still watch it and get chills every time. Now, they had featured performers. Now, Gorillaz usually collaborates with hip hop artists or, things like that. For this one, the songs Feel Good Inc., November Has Come, Oh Green World, maybe, Kids with Guns, Dirty Harry, things like that. Dare is a big one. But my favorite concerts are the ones where they take a simple song and they make it dynamic to where you've never heard anything like it before. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or if I'm explaining it well, where it takes the theme or the melody or the harmony or something like that and it builds on it into where it's a fever pitch at the end of it. And this one has that with almost every performance. They do a song that I don't like, Kids with Guns. They bring in Nina Cherry, who used to be the front woman of the Slits, the punk band back in the day. And she has a wail that you've never heard in your life. They bring in De La Soul, who does the Don't Stop, Get It, and Feel Good Inc. And they're having a ton of fun. Everybody's on drugs. They bring in Sean Ryder. Speaking of drugs, the guy that used to be the Happy Mondays front man, he is fucked up. And he's like, it's there. You got to be. But the lighting itself, watch this, even if you don't like their music, watch this for a completely original set. It is absolutely gorgeous. They're all in silhouette. Damon Albarn is basically at a piano just fucking jamming out with a white panel right behind him, and it's just white and black. The rest of the band is like blue and black and all that stuff. It is absolutely fantastic. It's not a movie, but fuck you guys. I'm a member of this podcast too. Not you guys.
Oh, no,
anybody
right.
listening.
You mean other guys who aren't listening or
other guys
participate
that would complain about it because it's so awesome. If you have the weed, get the weed. If you're taking the pot, take the pot and watch this, and you will thank me very, very much later on. Gorillaz live at the Apollo in Harlem, 2006. Demon Days. It will warm your cockles.
You can just find this on YouTube or whatever?
You can find the entire show on YouTube except for the Dirty Harry song, which is really good, but it's not essential.
Is there a Dirty Harry song or a Clint Eastwood song?
They did both.
Really?
Clint Eastwood was the I'm happy, I'm feeling glad I got sunshine. That was in the first album.
Dirty Harry song.
They do. It's on Demon Days, yeah.
That's crazy.
All right. Do we have some time for questions?
Shit, yeah.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
What the hell was that for us?
Let's cue it up.
Yeah, let's cue it up. We have some good ones. I'll just start at the beginning here. What are your thoughts on sequels that aren't really sequels, or really any self-proclaimed, quote, sequel that doesn't make sense compared to the original movie? An example of this would be American Psycho 2, where the movie originally was not intended to be a sequel, but ended up adjusting its plot to be considered a follow-up to American Psycho. First of all, has anyone else seen American Psycho 2?
I have not.
Oh, wow.
I have.
Because of Mila Kunis, or just because of American Psycho, or just because it was on?
It was on, man. William Shatner's in that movie.
He is.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy any of it?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
No. Like Mila
It's
Kunis.
certainly not
Mila
related.
Kunis is a great actress, but she's not good in this.
No, and it's
That
not
was
her fault.
a funny thing when Family Guy did a live reading of an episode that I guess they'd never done this episode or whatever. Like it was a banned episode. They were not allowed to do it. They had a live reading, so they got everybody to come out, and they were introducing everybody like what they, and introducing blah blah blah, and then Seth MacFarlane's like, all right, and now coming out to voice Meg, American Psycho 2's Mila Kunis.
Yes, yes, perfect. Exactly. What do you guys think about sequels that don't have anything to do with the original source material?
So I can see what they're saying here. Like, there's, one of the weird ones out there is like Troll 2, which is the more famous of the sequels of the, because it's so bad, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the original Troll whatsoever. And then, but there's I may have taken this question a different way, because one of the things that I find interesting is the Die Hard series. Die Hard came from a book called Nothing Lasts Forever. And so they turned that into a blockbuster film. Die Hard 2 was not written as an original screenplay of Die Hard 2. Nobody went and said, I'm going to write the sequel to Die Hard. It's that adaptation of a book called 58 Minutes. And so they took a book called 58 Minutes, and they were going to make that into a movie, and they wrote a screenplay, and then they just put John McClane and Holly and everybody into it, basically.
And then they made that sequel 88 minutes.
Yes, they did. And then they made the prequel 15 minutes.
Even, are you going to talk? You might have mentioned Die Hard with a Vengeance. It's the same.
Going to get to Die Hard with a Vengeance. Yes, Die Hard with a Vengeance was from a screenplay called Simon Says. That they were going to make that into a movie. They turned that into a Die Hard. They turned John McClane into that one. Live Free or Die Hard was based on an article. It was based on an article. It was going to be called ww3.com, and they put John McClane into it. Surprisingly, the only Die Hard that was actually written in screenplay form is bullshit. Good Day to Die Hard.
Oh, that's crazy.
They actually meant to write that. They didn't write that from
the only one they meant to write. It should never have been made.
They did it on purpose.
They did it on purpose. But in that case, I feel like it's fine. I think it's cool, because it's not like there are some, like, I believe the interesting thing about Die Hard with a Vengeance is that Warner Brothers bought Simon Says to be a Lethal Weapon movie at one point.
Wow.
So I was reading it. I think I read this on Den of Geek, had a big article about this and everything. Den of Geek was talking about how, like, you can kind of see sort of the banter between Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson as Mel Gibson and Danny Glover in that whole thing. And while those movies, you can say that those movies have some different tones to them that it doesn't seem. Bruce Willis plays John McClane, so I think everybody's willing. Nobody really sees a big difference between those movies, other than just the stories themselves, right? So it works. The way that they did that works essentially. By taking completely different stories and just sticking John McClane in it, and it totally worked out for the most part. But
until the fifth one,
talking about movies that don't feel like sequels to their originals, I feel like the Fast and Furious franchise has absolutely nothing to do with how it started. And maybe that, it's not like the same example we're given here with American Psycho 2. I think that's a situation where they were just like, well, we've got this title called American Psycho. Why don't we just call it Part 2 and it'll be a franchise or whatever. I don't think they did that with Fast and Furious. The Fast and Furious, though, was all about street racing. It's all it was. Now, all of a sudden, Vin Diesel's got connections around the world. He's a fucking spy. He's, he can do just fill Vin Diesel anywhere you want to, that he can do that job all of a sudden, even though he's just this dude who takes his life, whatever it is, 10 feet at a time. And then I thought also Basic Instinct 2 has
I have not seen this. Is that even Catherine Trammell in this one?
Yeah, it's Sharon Stone, and she's trying to get up on what's his name? His last name's Morrissey, but it's not fucking Morrissey. It's David Morrissey. It might be David Morrissey or whatever. He's trying to get up all on his jock in this movie, and it's not the same movie though. Like, she's still like playing head games and everything. That's about the only real similarity. When you make a movie Basic Instinct 2 well after when you could really get away with all the sex and stuff that they got away with in the first one, this one got a lot of muted bullshit sex in it. Like nothing, it's not nearly the whack off material of the first movie. What I'm saying is that they don't have as much sex scenes in it and everything. It's not. It might be one sex scene in it. I don't even remember there being much. Much at all. But she's still playing head games. That's about it. That's the only real similarity between the two movies.
Nice. So, and she shows her vagine. I'm sure.
In the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The second one, she got wise to the cameras being surreptitiously placed.
Oh, did she really? Like, honestly, did that happen in the movie? That she didn't uncross her legs? Never mind. I was thinking that would be a plot point in a terrible movie.
Like she
goes to open her legs and she's like, hang on.
Wait a minute. See, but the Catherine Trammell in the first movie knew what she was doing, though.
She sure did.
So there wouldn't have been anything. There wouldn't have been any lessons learned from the first movie. Like the second, I'm not going to do that again.
Hang on. They were looking at my skirt.
Yeah.
You scoundrels.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, I'm done with my sequels.
I will go. I had a hard time with this question, so I came up with two answers that don't really answer it. I came up with a positive example of sequels that don't really feel related, and that's The Hustler and The Color of Money, because they're both about Fast Eddie, Paul Newman's character, but that's literally the only connection, is that he's playing the same guy 40 years later. There's no interweaving plot details or settings or anything like that. And then I also, and I'm going to offend Dicer here, and I apologize, but I don't think Split is a proper sequel to Unbreakable in any sense of the word. I do appreciate the stealthness of it, and wish I had been able to experience that in the theater. I think hearing that music and seeing Bruce Willis would have made me go, what? But the literally only connection between them, besides that Bruce Willis cameo, is the setting. Philadelphia, and all of M. Night's movies are set in Philadelphia, so arguably they're all in the same universe, if that's the connection we're going with. And I think it's just that he got halfway through a movie and decided, I'm going to connect this to Unbreakable, and that's why it feels like such a loose connection for me. So.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make I know that he wanted to make a sequel to Unbreakable when I know he wanted to do that. And I remember there being an interview saying I just didn't see enough love for that movie to make a straight sequel. So it takes him 16, 17 years or whatever to make something that's loosely connected to it and everything. And yeah, it comes out of nowhere. And in fact, I was confused, man. I was very confused. I was just sitting there going, wait a minute, he's connecting this to Unbreakable, but what did all the stuff that I just saw have to do with Unbreakable, really?
Yeah, it's literally about that singular character.
Right, and they're trying to make it seem like, oh, okay, well, this is the dawning of, it's kind of like X-Men, we're like, we're getting the dawning of people evolving into supreme beings and everything like that. But still, like, it just, I was not satisfied with that at all. That's how he chose to connect those movies.
Yeah.
I agree. I had two sequels that are related in a universe, which I don't. It's so ham-handed that I don't understand it. One I like, one I don't. Is 10 Cloverfield Lane and Cloverfield Paradox, and they could not be. Well, they could not be more different from the original, and they also could not be more different from each other.
And talk about movies that did not start as Cloverfield.
Exactly.
That's another one. Oh, you were about to say that. Sorry.
No, it's fine because, Dan Trachtenberg, I think, knew that it was going to be somewhat related within the universe of Cloverfield at the point that he took over. But that ending seems so tacked on. Now, this is a very, very good movie. Great performances. The ending is what really, like, spits you in the face because, like, okay, it has to be something, but it's like it could be anything. It could be one of Denis Villeneuve's little cephalopod things, walking around out there. Mm-hmm. It has no relation whatsoever to Cloverfield, but it was a very, very good movie. I just wish it didn't have that ending. Mm-hmm. And the Cloverfield Paradox, I think, even though it started out not being related to it, once it did, it seemed like it was trying to avoid the whammy stuff that was in the second, quote, movie and pepper it in. And that made it even fucking worse because there's good ideas in Cloverfield Paradox, I think, but it is a terrible movie.
I think they shot most of that movie before it became a Cloverfield film. I think
you're talking about Paradox.
It's little bits. I need to research, but I'm pretty sure I remember reading that it was almost done and became a Cloverfield movie after the fact.
I think that's right.
I understand the marketing decisions behind that. You've got a surprise hit with Cloverfield and everything, and everybody's very curious about the stuff behind it, especially the Bad Robot connection with J.J. Abrams. But also, man, tell your fucking story, because you got a great story in 10 Cloverfield Lane, and you've got bits of a good story in Paradox. You don't have to muck it up with this other stuff. Just for marketing, you're having it on Netflix. It's a sci-fi drama. It's got a great cast. Just go with that.
By the way, we send this movie, but bring it up again. I hate when they bring up parallel universes in movies. And the parallel universe is exactly the same except for minor differences. Mm-hmm. But those minor differences would have caused way bigger issues, or not issues, but way bigger changes within that world than what they're trying to make it sound like. The same exact things happen on these planets, only couple of different decisions here and there. And I'm sorry, there's no way that it works that way. I'm probably going to get called out for that somehow, but
no, I understand that theme is explored in Yesterday. Did you say you have or have not seen Yesterday at this point?
Have not seen.
That's what Dicer and I argue about all the time, is because it's enjoyable. It's not perfect, but it's enjoyable. But yes, it's weird that it's not only the Beatles that are missing from that alternate universe. There are a lot of different other things that would have drastically altered things, like the lack of cigarettes being around. I'd be like, no, there's going to be major differences if there's no cigarettes around. Yeah. I understand the Beatles, but no, that's not right. No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, so yeah, the Cloverfield, watch Cloverfield. The first one is great, I think, for a found footage film. The second one is really, really good, and the third one can eat my balls.
Mm-hmm. There'll be a fourth one someday.
Yep.
It will be based on a book called Die Hard 6.
That's true. Yeah, a screenplay. This treatment's been around.
Someone just writes a book called Die Hard 6.
Like Leonard Part 6.
Can you imagine there's some asshole at home somewhere who's like slaving away on a keyboard. Like, this is Die Hard 6. God damn it! They're gonna like submit that shit to some publisher. All right, that's gonna do it for this week. Keep going to SinCast presented by Cinemasins on Facebook. We're also on Cinemasins Twitter, Music Video Sins Twitter. We're on SoundCloud. We're on Discord. And if you want to get on Discord, you can either go to our Reddit page and find the link on the right side there, or you can go private Facebook message to me, and I will give you a link there. Anything else we need to talk about?
You know what Jeremy is wearing right now, Chris?
Yes.
It's a beanie. It's a beanie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is not a Cinemasins branded beanie, but he has one or two.
Mm-hmm.
And you, my friend, listening, you can get one now at the Cinemasins merch store, teespring.com/Cinemasins. I think that's the address. I don't really know. Go to one of our videos.
Just go to
click on the Teespring thing or go to cinemasins.com and go to the store.
Yeah.
And you can find beanies, you can find socks, you can find T-shirts, you can find jock straps, you can find thongs, you can find earmuffs.
Lying.
Okay, you can't find like half of those, but you can find cool shit.
And these are good.
There's a lot of things there that you wouldn't expect there, for sure.
I would agree, yeah. And the beanies are quality, man. I'm a beanie wearer, and it's not quite hot enough today for a true winter beanie. So this is sort of my spring beanie, which is the lightest thread one that I have. But these are solid. They're warm. They're tight without being painful. And it's stitched on there. It's not like a sticker of the pitchfork. It's really high quality. And if you like beanies, check it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. It's Chris Atkins and Jeremy Scott and Barrett Sher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Did you see that thing on Twitter where a church accidentally printed the lyrics to Tupac's Hail Mary instead of the church hymn Hail Mary?
No.
And so it's like a church program, and you open up inside, and it's like, I don't know the lyrics of that song, but it's like, I'm going to get a gun and kill you like a bitch. I don't know the lyrics to that song. I got to find it.
That's hilarious.
I got to find this shit.
He was killed in 96, right?
That sounds right.
Sure.
Must be. Yeah, 96. So he had a lot of movies come out afterwards.
A lot of movies
that's archived.
Archive footage, yeah.
So Gridlocked came out. Bullet came out.
Gridlocked was the other one that I was thinking of.
And Gang Related was in 97 too. He was the detective.
So maybe it was Above the Rim not one of them?
Above the Rim was 94. He was still
okay.
He was still
so he was still kicking.
So you can see.
No, okay, let me see.
In the chat on the Google Hangout. This blows like a 12-gauge shotty. Ugh, feel me.
Why is it not coming up? Come on, Twitter.
See, I just don't understand how this shit happens.
The misprint?
I mean, look.
It was probably an altar boy.
I understand going to the internet and looking up Hail Mary and whatever, but you don't realize that is a really common thing, and you want to make sure that the words are right. I mean,
no, that's got to be an altar boy.
Oh my god!
They always do. They always print off the Hail Marys and the Our Fathers and the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure an altar boy was like, "Here you go. I'm a ghost in these killing fields."
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe they didn't think there was anything wrong with that. Maybe they thought, same old shit.
I'm running through it. I don't see any obvious obscenities. So this is a perfect thing to sneak in.
Mm-hmm.
Feel me.
I've yet to do it, but I'm planning to make a video at some point to run at my funeral, and I'll update it every couple of years. But it would just be me commandeering my own funeral and cracking wise and not allowing anyone to be all stuffy. That'll be me. It'll be me up on screen going, well, at least Chris lasted longer than I did. And then when everybody laughs, I'm going to say, that's going to be awkward if Chris actually died. So, taped the new version of this. I'm going to do that kind of shit and just fuck with the audience. Hey, Mom, Dad, good to see you. Wait.
Yeah. You could be like James Halliday in Ready Player One.
I didn't finish that movie all 2 times I tried.
It's he actually, upon his death, he opened up this Easter egg hunt to find the key to the Oasis, his virtual reality game. And whoever gets that basically owns the world because it's like a multi-trillion-dollar
thing. All right. I don't think I'm going to go that far. I might do like a look under your
whoever
look
gets
under your
own
seat.
Cinemasins.
One of you has something taped under your chair. I don't know.
You're Spielberg. You don't have to make concessions to the book. You can make the book.
Make the book. Steven Spielbergo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I sure hope he gives us one more big home run.
Wouldn't that be nice? That would be very nice. I don't know what he's got left in his arsenal, though.
It's been a while since there's been a big old home run. I mean, his first half of his career was basically all home runs. And, no one could keep that up. I'm not dogging on the man. I'm just saying, if we're looking for the last home run, and we're going to look at Minority Report, right?
Yeah, and I think he's either getting obsessed with story or he's getting obsessed with technology. So, if you get the Spielberg that's obsessed with technology, you get Ready Player One. If you get the one that's obsessed with story at the expense of other things, it would be War Horse.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Lincoln's pretty good, but
The Post. The Post
has
nothing
going
for it.
The Post is perfectly average. I just don't ever find myself going, man, I really want to watch Lincoln again.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, yeah. I've only seen Lincoln once.
Yeah.
And that was plenty of times.
Daniel Day won the Oscar.
He sure did.
And he was probably worthy. Anytime he dials it up, anytime he gets in the batter's box, he's going to be all right.
Do you think these championships will be asterisks?
No, but I don't think people will care. I mean, maybe they'll be literally asterisks, but I don't think anyone's going to treat them. I don't think anyone looks at the Lakers as I don't think anyone holds last year's championship by the Lakers the same as any other championship. It's not.
Yeah, just think public perception is going to say these championships were won under some very weird circumstances.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think the Lakers. They did their best to show that it looked like the same as any other ones, but it wasn't. It wasn't. Half the team wasn't even invited to the last 16 game of the season.
Yeah,
before the playoffs. So, no, the Lakers were probably going to win the championship anyway, and I think that's why they get validated as being the true champs. But if the Pistons had come out of nowhere and won it, it would be nobody saying they're the true champions.
You also have to include the fact that that Golden State didn't have any of their players, and they were if Golden State ever gets healthy again, it's going to be a juggernaut again, but I don't know if they will. I mean, they're kind of, are they even close to getting healthy again?
No, I mean, I think they're fine. I think they're an average team, but Klay Thompson's out for the year again.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah, they need Klay Thompson.
They do.
They do. Yeah, the only thing interesting for me was just the fact that LA and Tampa Bay were vying for championships. There was just a back and forth, Tampa Bay Lightning won, and then the Lakers won, and then there was a battle to see which city would be the primo when the Dodgers played the Tampa Bay Rays. And then so the Dodgers took that, and it's 2-1. And who knows? Maybe the Tampa Bay Bucks. No, they're not. But man, Tampa just seemed really cramped and I don't know, just sprawled. It's cramped and sprawled. Is that even possible?
Spramped.
Yeah, spramped. Spramped is right.
Oh God, I just spramped in my pants.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll leave you guys to figure out what that means.
Okay, so briefly, 2 quick segues. In terms of fresh seafood, I learned only recently, because I saw a bunch of king crab legs at the store the other day and wanted to eat them, that king crab is it's flash cooked at the harbor right after it gets off the boat. Otherwise, it would rot. And so you only have to steam that shit to cook it. You don't actually have to cook it, which is a miracle. I can do that. But also, speaking of king crab, I just learned literally 30 minutes before this podcast that there is a Deadliest Catch video game. It came out last year where you get to captain your own ship and put your pots in the sea wherever you want and be a deckhand. And I'm going to lose so many fucking hours to this game.
Anyway, I like that. I don't even watch that show that much, but I could get into that.
Man, if I put it on that show, I'll lose 6 hours before I change the channel every episode's the same, but I love it.
I used to watch it all the time, but yeah, the sameness does get to you after a while. I watched maybe 1 or 2 seasons in full, and I even have my what do you call them these days?
DVR.
Set up to record them. And so though every spring I'll start seeing Deadliest Catches show up on my DVR, and I'm like, oh yeah, new season. And I watch one episode and I'm like, oh man, that's going to be weird for that crew. And then I just stop watching it, because it's always the same thing. I think they heighten a lot of things, just like any reality show does,
Yeah.
Like the truth of the matter of like a lot of these, the dynamic on these boats and everything is probably well beyond what it's probably way different from what they're portraying and everything. Yeah. They always have the greenhorn who's like a fuck up, like always a fuck up. Like it's like, this is going to be tough for the greenhorns. Like, was it Mike Rowe who's got that narration? He's like, this is going to be tough for the greenhorns who have to stay up for 72 hours straight. And, and it's always a guy who's like, who's sleeping like 5 minutes late and everything. And they're like, and they're like, we're going to have to get that greenhorn out of here, man, because he's not coming up to the deck when he's supposed to, and bullshit like that, but it's amazing when they finally pull out the pots and you're like, oh my God, is this going to be a big one? No whammies stuff.
No whammies.
Wow. So yeah, you get to, oh yeah, the captain was right to go to that one place that nobody else was going to. That was great. And then most of the time though, it's like, yeah, there was a reason why nobody went to that place.
That video game apparently is on PS4 and Switch. So
it is, and it's on. You can get it on Xbox or PC. I'm all over this shit. I actually said to my wife this morning, I wonder if there's a Deadliest Catch style crab fishing game, because we have a nephew that loves those super realistic farming simulation games.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if there's a game like that, but for crab fishing. And then I went and Google. Yes, official Deadliest Catch game. And, I'm going to be doing that tonight.
Did you get those crab legs? Those king crabs?
No, because I did not know how to cook them when I was in the store. And then I got home and found out how to cook them. So I will be doing that. And then also, a friend of mine made a rib roast for Christmas, and I've never made one in my life. And it's time that I make some prime rib. So there you go.
I'll send you my recipe. It was amazing.
You got a recipe, huh? I was told just to rub some basic spices on there and leave it in the oven for a long time.
Okay, that's a recipe.
Okay,
but then you also have to make an auger, and you have to make some horseradish sauce, And yeah, basically, you know what you're doing.
The other thing about Deadliest Catch that they do is they'll be like, I don't know if they'll be able to make their quota. And then like by the end of it, I guess they've made their quota, because they hardly ever have this situation at the end where they're weighing their crab at the end and going, oh, I totally fucked up. I didn't get my quota this year. Like,
no, they don't really go into that.
Never happens, but that's always a thing. That's a thread through one of these boats seasons is, oh man, they keep coming up with empties. Oh my God, empty. And it's like, well, I don't know if I'll be able to make my quota this year. I don't even know if I'll be able to pay for the boat and all this other stuff. Then by the end of the season, somehow magically they've got all the crab that they need.
Okay, so here's what I think happens. Because in my research about the king crab and how it's already cooked, I also learned the history of king crab. And that in 1980, 81-ish, they brought up so much crab that they literally killed the industry the next year because they oversaturated the market. There was a time, gentlemen, in the late 70s where king crab was cheap and everywhere.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was what poor people ate when they couldn't afford lobster.
Wow.
But after they devastated the industry, they came in and decided to fish sustainably. And so now the entire fleet has a limit, and they're all competing for the largest share of that full limit. But they also have bosses who own the boat who tell them, here's your quota. So what I think happens is Discovery comes in and says, anybody on the show that doesn't make their quota, we pay cash value to the owner of the boat to make it up. And we want these people to be the captain of the boat next year because they're stars of our reality show.
Okay.
I think that's what happens. And they just gloss over.
And they just say, all right, screw it.
Doesn't
make my quota.
There was one season where I think it was Brad, the guy who was underneath one of the other captains and got his own boat. He goes out and he's still kind of, green on the whole thing. He doesn't of the whole captaining thing. And like one season, he doesn't know where to go at all. He knows like maybe a couple of places, but he's like, you know what? I'm going to try this one spot that worked for this captain 5 years ago or something like that. And so he goes out there and like every pot they pull up has nothing in it, zero. And then it's like 3 episodes later. And of course, 3 episodes later could be an hour later for these, the way these things are. But like they keep on turning up empties, and then they'll be like, now it's time for Captain Jake it's Jake is his name. And they're trying to call Captain Jake needs to call one of his own captains to see what he can do about his crab catch. And so he calls the captain, and the captain he calls, they're always surly and always like, you want to know where crab is all of a sudden? You're the captain of your own boat. Blah, 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 blah. God, they're such assholes, man. They're such fucking assholes. And they're like, okay, well, I'll help you out. Come out here and we'll team up or whatever. And so they team up, and inevitably the young captain always fucks something up that pisses off the old captain, and it was just whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what happens. I think the show goes over and buys out the quota or whatever that they didn't get.
You sons of bitches.
I was telling Barrett before you got on that I went to the doctor. It was like a follow-up thing today. And doctor goes, yeah, we're gonna have that COVID vaccine or whatever. And I was like, sign me up. Give me it.
Yeah.
And she said, well, you might be able to. Yeah, you probably around tier 3 or whatever it is. I don't know. But then she proceeds to say that people on tier 1, they're asking first, like the old people who, and all that. A lot of them are saying no to the vaccine.
Son of a bitch.
And I'm just like, I mean, it means other people who want it are going to get it faster, but it also means there's going to be a bunch of fuckholes out there who are like, going out there without vaccines and stuff like that and continuing the spread amongst other people. And
right. Well, and then even when you're vaccinated, I'm trying to talk with my wife about reasonable expectations for getting back to normal. Even once we're vaccinated, there's still the possibility that we could carry the disease and infect somebody else, even though we ourselves don't get sick. And so, I mean, it's going to be a lot longer than I think people are thinking. I think now that there's a vaccine, people are like, oh, in March, I'm going to be able to hug my family. And I'm like, let's look more at November.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still going to be going out with masks. I mean, you have to pretty much, but
yeah.
I'm still going to go out with masks and stuff like that. But the important thing is that I can go out to places. I can go out and, experience maybe a restaurant or something like that.
Yeah, you can't get sick.
Rub and tug. Yeah.
Rub and tug. Yeah, man, I miss those. And a lot
I feel
of
like there's a rub
business.
and tug right maybe 100 yards from our resort. There's a thing that says massage. And when it says just massage, I think that's a handy
You're
place.
probably right. It's kind of like when that one place that was on 8th Avenue for a long time. It was parking in rear and all that bullshit.
Yeah.
I
never went there. I feel bad about it.
I know. Should have gone while it take advantage of it while it was there. Or something like that.
Yeah, and he's like, Schwa! Make
and
the
he's
Schwartz
like,
be
I gotta
with
make
you.
sure. Yeah, I gotta make sure that they know that it's Schwartz.
Schwartz.